Greetings, 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 everyone. Steve, Paracords of Kindness. How you doing today? Hopefully your weaving's been happy. Okay, what I have for you today is I'm going to show you how I make a modified, inverted. When I say modified, I mean inverted, and I'll explain that when we get to it. Stitched Zawbar, Z-A-W-B-A-R, paracord bracelet. Right? Here's a couple of examples. And one of the reasons I love this bracelet is because it's so versatile. There's so many different things you could do with it. You can make it one color and stitching, two colors and stitch. It's a very versatile bracelet. But the one we're going to be working on today, I'm going to show you some of these stitching elements. Like I said, there's quite a few ways to stitch it, but I'm going to show you 3 different ways in this video of how to stitch it. But this is the one we're going to be working on today. This is Stealth Olive Bracelet, and all the stitching, which is 3 different elements, or 4, you could count it 4, is in moss green. Right? Let you see this thing. But that's the one we're going to make in the video today. And I'll hold this up here so you can see the thickness of it. I know me. I'm always looking at the thickness of a bracelet so I can get a sizing purposes. Right? But that's one I made. The one I posted, 2 I posted recently are these 2 right here. This is black and imperial red. The same stitch pattern, everything's the same. But this one's slightly different. Done the bracelet is 2-toned. And here's some I've made in the past. And these are done. These are the same. These 3 right here are the same. Everything's the same. The colors are obviously different, but this one right here has some micro stitching going up under those black pieces. These don't have that. But you can learn how to do all this stitching, all the different stitchings by watching this video. So if you want to know, and you want all the tips and tricks and commentary that I'm known for on this channel, stick around, folks, because we'll get right to it. Okay, folks, I'm back and I'm set up. Let's see, where do I begin? I hadn't made a video in a while, and for that I apologize. I've had a lot going on. Life happens. I'm sure most of you can understand, so I apologize. But I figured I would make this one, and I got another one I want to make. I had a few requests for it, but I'll get to them. I promise I'll get to them. Okay, let's see. First off, this right here is a modified inverted Zawbar. And the reason, when I say inverted, what I actually mean by that, some people, I've heard it called reverse or inverted or whatever. What I mean by that is I've taken the original weave and I basically just reversed all the overs and unders. And the end result is this. I'll show you on one of these I've done. This is the original Zawbar, done in 2 colors, and I've added, here, let me zoom in just a little bit, and I just added a piece of 275 running up under it. But this, regardless of that piece of burnt orange 275, this is the original weave, okay? And we notice the back of it. If you look at it, this accent color, they're angled downward on both sides. But when you flip it over, that piece that runs across is not the accent color on this weave, but that color that runs around the edge and goes almost all the way across the bracelet, they're angled upwards. We see? And basically, you go through, what I do is I'll go through and all the overs and unders, I simply reverse them. So what basically it does is it makes the non-display side the display side. You see what I'm saying? Now I know some people when they'll go to do this, they'll put their buckles on upside down and flip it over and then just do the weave. And then when you take it off, you just flip it over. Does that make sense? Now I don't like to do that because you can't actually see the display. What will end up being the display side. Does that make sense? And that's what I've done with this one. I've simply reversed all the overs and unders. So if you see a tutorial, there's a few tutorials for the regular Zawbar out there. And I just watched them, learned how to do it, and I just reversed everything. Now this one, like I said, these right here I'll show you are done in the original style. And I've got a few that I've done that are the inverted. Okay. Now, with that said, I'll say this too. For those who, follow me on Instagram, Paracords of Kindness, the links down below in the description. And you follow my work in the various Facebook groups and stuff. You know that I do a lot of stitching. That's what I'll do. I'll find some weave. In this case, this one, the weave itself is pretty simple. It's not a very hard weave. It's a 6-strand cord. It's not a very hard weave, but there are so many possibilities and different ways of stitching this thing. You can do, let's see. Here's one I did. Like I said, this is one of the first ones I did. Actually, let me show you. One of the first ones I did where I tried to stitch it was this one. And I did this little center stitch down it. And I didn't really like it. But this one allows you, the way that you have this one piece that comes around and covers almost the whole bracelet, you can use some of your multicolored cords and they turn out really well if you match it with the stitching. Often I'll make like the bracelet solid black and then the accent color and the stitching to complement each other. But there's one, and I did the same thing again, just in different colors. It's the same stitch pattern and everything, and we're not going to be doing that one today. I don't really like this stitch pattern. I didn't like the way it turned out. And then I ended up just doing this one. Because if you look at it, where this piece goes across, there's a little bit of a gap up under that piece. And I thought, I can just run a piece up under there. Kind of like an underlying accent. As you can see in this case, it's burnt orange, and it brings out the orange in this accent piece, which looks really well. But these were all done in the original Zawbar, right? And here's one too I've done. You can do it in a 2-color. And the ones I've done recently that were the inverted, here's one I did. People seem to like this one. I wasn't sure about these colors. It's black. And this it's called snakeskin. What it actually is rust with black diamonds. And I put a piece of burnt orange down it. And then the stitching on it is chocolate brown. And that piece of stitching is one piece. It wraps around. It starts on this piece of black. And then it goes to this one, and back and forth until it goes all the way down. And that's one of the things I'm going to show you today. But if you look at it, you notice how the stitching is following the bottom side of every black piece. Hopefully that's in focus. It's following the bottom side of the black piece. What I'm going to be doing today is like this. All one color, and then we're going to do the stitching in another color. But in this one, if you look, that stitching is following the top side of the black piece. You can probably see it better if you look on the side. It's following the top side. And then I've got this little zigzag piece going back and forth down it. And it's kind of hard to see, but it does have a piece of, what is it? In this case, it's 275 that's running up under there. Just like the burnt orange piece on this one, there is a piece of red, Imperial Red 275 running up there, but it kind of gets lost. But it is needed in order to do this little zigzag stitch in the middle. So you could, and that's what I'm saying about this one. There's so many possibilities of how you can do this stitch. You can stitch it so many ways. You can do it one color. bracelet and then stitching another color. So many possibilities, and that's why I like this one so much. But you could do this where that red 275, like I say, I don't know how well you can see that. You barely see it, but it's running up under there. Well, you have to have that in order to wrap around to do that middle zigzag. But you could do that piece in the same color as the bracelet, so it would be more hidden. I haven't done that yet. I've thought about trying it. I haven't done it yet. But there's a lot of possibilities on this weave. Okay, now with all that said, let's see. Let's give credit where credit's due. From what I understand, Jason Deckman was the one that came up with the original Zawbar weave. So we're gonna give him credit for that. Like always, the measurements will be down below. And this one is, like I said, it's a 6-strand core. And the way I do a 6-strand core, there's a link below to my core setup playlist. Check it out. But I do it slightly different in this case. Obviously, I put the initial cow hitch at the bottom and just feed it back up. But when I get to the end, right here, I put these 2 little knots on here. Well, in this case, most of the time in the video, in the tutorial for the 6-string core setup, you'll see me do it. I'll have the working end, and I'll come over the top of that outer strand and go back through that loop and tighten it up. Well, in this, I did it just the opposite. I go up under and come through this way, and then go back through. That way, it's on the back side, and it's angled this way, and the same way with the other one. Do it the same way. That way it's on the back side and it's angled this way. Why? Because we're doing this inverted. That's why I did it that way. But like I say, this weave is not that hard. It's kind of tricky to get it started and to get everything orientated so your cords are right. But once you do it, it's not that hard. It's pretty simple. The bracelet itself, simple, quick, really easy. Like I said, you can do it in 1 color, or you can do it in 2 colors, and then all kind of stitching possibilities. But for those who know me, like I said, those who know me and follow me, you know I do a lot of stitching. I will make a bracelet, or make, I'll show you this one. Here's just the short version of this thing. I just kind of whipped it together out of some scraps I had, and I take my stitching needle and I start poking holes in it, trying to find where and how to get the stitch and what. And you can see, I know it's a jumbled mess, but all this makes sense to me. I was practicing, figuring out how I can do all these different stitch patterns and stuff. And I come up with, but what we're going to do today is one like this. It's going to be just like this. It's going to be, obviously, this is Stealth Olive. And I'm going to do the stitching in, I'm not sure exactly yet what colors I'm going to use. Most likely, oh, and I'll say this too. This piece, in this case here, I'll show you on the other one, just so you can see it better. That piece of burnt orange that's running down through there, I prefer to use 275 because it gives the bracelet a little depth. It causes these accent pieces, the ones that run the majority, across the majority of the width of the bracelet, it gives them, when you run that piece up under there, it causes them to raise up, and it gives it a little depth, or a little relief, if you will. But, like always, it affects the thickness, so you got to take into consideration for sizing. Now, I usually, because we're going to stitch this and all that, I'm going to add, my add to on this is 1 3/4 inches. So if your wrist is 7 inches, measure, add 1 3/4 inches to that when you go to get your jig measurement. Wrist measurement plus add 2 equals jig measurement. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to do one like this. And I'm either going to do it in, no, this is what I was going to say. That piece that's running lengthwise down through there, I prefer 275. Now you can use 95, or you can actually even use 550. I've done that on one. I don't have it. I've already mailed it out to a customer. But what I did was I put a piece of 550 and a piece of 95, 2 different colors, running down on both sides, right? So you had like that double accent piece running down through there. Now I didn't do all this fancy wraparound stitching on that one, but I did. But this one, we're going to do it like this today, the inverted, right? Okay, so with all that said, I know I talk a lot, but I try to explain what I'm doing. For anybody who's new, thanks for being here. I try to explain. I don't only... If you want to know the mechanics over here, under there, pull tight, if you want to know that, there's a lot of channels out there. Thousands of channels. Hundreds of channels and thousands of videos to show you that. What I try to do is, over here, under there, pull this tight and in this direction. Makes sense? I try to give you a little bit of what some of the other channels don't give. I try to teach you how to make a better product, not just how to make it. Does that make sense? But anyway, with all that said, let's see if I can't get this thing started. Like I said, it can be a little tricky, so bear with me here until I get it started. But once you get it started and you see how it works, it's pretty simple. But like I say, I've done these knots so they come out on the back side. Okay, so let me see. Let me look at this one. Make sure I'm going to do this right. Okay, we're going to take... In this case, the way I'm going to do this one, I'm going to take this side right here, and we're going to go, can we see this? Let me see. Can we see this? Like I said, we got 6 strands. Hopefully you can see all that. But we're going to go basically up under these first 2, right here on this side, and then we're going to go over the rest of them. Right? Okay, now for this one, we're going to take the other one and we're going to come up through that same slot and we're going to go over these last 2. Okay, now make sure I'm doing this right. Yeah. We're going to take this one, the one that's crossed over 4. It went under 2, basically, and over 4. Now we're going to go wrap it around and go under 2 and over the last 4. And pull your slack through. Kind of push it up. Making sure you don't have any twists in it. Because if you got a twist in this, I say to be mindful of your twist. I see people, and I do it too. I'm not perfect, but I try not to have those twists in there. I see people's work sometimes, and they'll have a twist in the cord, and they just keep going. No, get the twist out so it looks clean. Neat, clean, and tight, right? Is that what I always say? But now that we got them both on the same side, that's kind of when we start. So what we'll do, so we're going to take the one that's on the top, and we're going to go around the back, and we're going to go under 4 and over 2, and come up through this slot right here. Now this one is going over those 4. We're going to wrap it around and go under the first 2 and up through the slot. I'm going to just pull it through. And that's really all there is to this. But every time you do it, you kind of push it up. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you, this right here is polyester cord. So it's a little more, it's a little stiffer, a little harder to work with. So it's probably... It's not going to do like the other ones I've made, those were nylon. This is some polyester, so it's a little stiffer, a little more rigid. You just have to get used to working with it. It's not, like I tell people say, which one's the best? The question is not which one's the best. The goal is to learn to work with both of them. Because they do interact slightly different. Okay, so here, let me do this. Maybe this will help, because I know it's kind of hard to see these colors. Let me do this just for the sake of this video, which I do this a lot, y'all know. I'll go ahead and put my fids on here, and I'll weave like this sometimes. Right now, it's pretty long. The ends, the working ends are pretty long. And, yeah, I'm going to have to redo this one. Hang on just a second. But a lot of times on some of these weaves, I'll use my fid. And I've said this before. Sometimes it's easier just to work with the fid or your lacing needle on the end of it, instead of having to try to over here, under there, and all that. You can just take that thing and do it wherever and pull it through. Does that make sense? It makes it a little quicker sometimes. But when you first start off and you have these really long cords, you got to be mindful that you don't drop, let it drop or whatever and bink, hit on the ground, because you don't want to damage the tips of these things. So you have to be careful with that. But I'm going to do this for the sake of, hopefully y'all be able to see this. Like I say, you got two coming out. You got one on the top, one on the bottom, so to speak. Or one toward the buckle, I should say. That's the one we're going to start with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that end, and I'm going to go under 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then over these last two. Hopefully that can be seen. Right? I'm going to pull it through. Mindful of the twist. See, there's a twist in that thing. Pull it up. There you go. Now on the second one, we're going to do basically just the opposite. We're going to go under these first two, under the first two from this side, and go over the last 4. And pull it through. Mindful of your twist. You see how I had that twist in there? I've said this before for the newcomers. When you get a twist in here, you don't want that in there. And as you pull it through, you can twist it depending on which way it needs to be twisted, but you can pull it. In this case, I'd rotate it away from me. Make sure it's laying flat, especially with this polyester cord. Those twists, yes, they are very noticeable. Alright, now you have your 2 cords on this side. We push it up. Try to maintain your tension consistency, like I've said in the past videos. I seen somebody new in one of the groups I'm in, and they made this bracelet. They didn't do it inverted. They did it, and I told them, they said, this was the first bracelet I made. I'm like, outstanding. And what I meant by that is your tension consistency. I personally have a tendency to pull mine as tight as I can. Right? I know some people don't do that. That's just style. There's nothing wrong with pulling it real tight or not pulling it tight. There's nothing wrong with either one. It's just a preference. The important factor is tension consistency. The same amount of tension you use to pull this, where it wraps around that edge, pull this one, you have to pull it the other direction every single time, the same amount of tension. That way your bracelet is smooth down the side. You don't have one that's the wrap-around piece that sticks way out because you didn't pull it tight, but the next one, you pulled it really tight and it sticks in. So the edges is like boop, 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 boop. It looks like a heart monitor. We don't want that. That's what doesn't look good. Now I'll say this, some of these, like this one I've got on, I'll show you this one I've got on. This olive drab is nylon. And this maroon is polyester. So they act a little bit differently. And you can see how, and I kind of did this on purpose, but you see how the olive drab sticks out just a little bit, but the maroon is recessed a little bit, so it gives it a little texture on the side. But if you look at it, they're all even. I mean, they're not even with each other, but it's boop, 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 boop. It's even. It's not smooth down the side, but does that make sense? Every one of the maroons are lined up with every one of the maroons, and every one of the greens is lined up with every one of the greens. And it gives a little bit of a textured edge. Does that make sense? So just be mindful. That's one of the most important things on these bracelets. Like I've said before, fishtails and trilobites, where they wrap around that edge, that tension consistency is such an important thing. You don't have to pull it extremely tight, and you don't have to not pull it tight. You just have to pull it with the same amount of tension. Tension consistency. Okay, but that's okay. But that's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. Like I said, we take that one right there. Now we got them both coming out. The one that's on the top, we're going to wrap it around. Let me get the end of it. We're going to wrap it around, and we're going to go, it's going to wrap around the back side, right? We're going to go under 4 and over those last 2. I'm going to pull it through. And we're going to pull it through. Mindful of your twist. Mindful of your twist. See how it's got a twist in it? Oop, wrong direction. And just kind of push it up a little bit. Sit off the side. Now we're going to take the other one, and we're going to wrap it around. But on this one, we're going to go under 2 and over 4. You're basically alternating your overs and unders. It's the same combination, you're just inverting them or let's not use that word. The first one went under 2 and over, or under 4 and over 2. This one goes under 2 and over 4. Makes sense? Now that you got it up there, give it a little snug and push it up toward the buckle. Right? I can already see now this one looks like it's going to have a little bit of a gap in there just because it's polyester right there. If you can see that here. Where's my handy dandy laser paracord pointer? Right here. There's a little bit of a gap, and you see that core strand. It's just the nature of the way these things are crossing and the fact that this is polyester. It may disappear as I keep going. It's going to hide itself a little bit, but not much. But, and I'll say this too. I've said this, and I've said this. If you know you're going to stitch this, like I say, I pull mine as tight as I can. If the knot or the weave will allow me to pull it tight, I will. Some instances, it causes the knot to capsize or distort, and it doesn't look right if you pull it too tight. There's a few out there like that. But if it's one that I can pull it's really, really tight, I'll try to pull it as tight as I can. But, that's a huge but. But if you know you're going to be stitching the thing, don't pull it as tight as you normally would. And that, it's all relative to how tight you pull your normal tension you use. Me, I pull tight. So when I know I'm going to stitch one, I don't pull it quite as tight. Why? That way there's still a little bit of looseness in there. And when I go to stitch it, it fills all that in and it tightens up in the end. Does that make sense? You got the gaps it's easier to get your stitching needle through there. But as you do it and you work it down, you can feel that bracelet gets tighter and tighter and tighter because all those little spaces are being filled in with, your stitching, whether it be microcord 95 or whatever it is you're using, and it tightens the whole thing up in the end. Does that make sense? That's just one of those from experience, you've done it and you know type thing. That's why I tell people, practice, 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 practice. Do this as much as you can. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at this. I had somebody comment on something I did the other day. They said, do you ever sleep? I'm like, yeah, not much and at weird hours. But this is what I do. I do this, you know, people have a 9-to-5 job. Yeah, this is my 9-to-5 job. This is what I do. I sit here and make these things pretty much all day. Okay, we're going to take the one on the top. The one on the top. And we're going to go under 4 and over 2. And we'll just pull through. And that's really it. I mean, it's not, the bracelet itself is not really that hard. Make sure you don't have a twist. Just kind of give it a loose cinch. Kind of push it up. And then the next one, we're going to go under 2 and over 4. And pull your slack through. When you get over it, give it a little loose cinch. Push it up, push it up. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Now, like I always do. Like I've said this before. I was telling a friend of mine this the other day. He said something. And I told him, I said, there's quite a few videos. He was asking me about this. I sent him some pictures of it. And he was like, He said, I might have to try that. I said, there's quite a few videos out there of how to do it. And he said, what was it he said? He said, I found one video called this, and I found one called this. I said, they're probably the same thing. I said, it doesn't matter, but I told him this, and here's my tip. When you go to do one of these weaves for the first time, watch, pull up some YouTube videos and watch, 3, 4 of them. 2, 3, 4 of them. I know a lot of us have our go-to channel for tutorials that we like to watch. I get it. Hey, watch them. But watch some other ones also. And, yes, listen to what they say and how they're doing it, but watch their hands. That's the part that I think a lot of people miss. Watch their hands, how they grab the cord, how they pull it, which direction, because I've said this to some people in the past. We are working in a 3-dimensional medium. It's not just left, right, up, and we're working in 3 dimensions. So when you go to tighten up a bracelet, sometimes you pull it straight up, sometimes you pull it out, sometimes you have to pull it at an angle this way, but at an angle like this also. You see what I'm saying? And watch how they grab the cord, how they push it under there, and how their hands interact. And you can pick up, and a lot of times they don't explain it, what they're doing and how they're doing it. Watch the way they do it. Watch the little techniques they use. And begin to incorporate some of that stuff in the way you do it. And you will get faster and better, I promise you. But that's something I think a lot of people, most people when they watch a video, what they want to know is the mechanics. Over here, under there, pull tight. And that's great. You got to know that. But, like I've said, I'll watch 2 or 3 videos, and by the time I get ready to actually make the bracelet, I already know the overs and unders, the mechanics. That's the easy part. I want to know which direction to pull it, how tight, you got to do this one first, this one next, and then this one next. Because there's some of these knots that you can't tighten in just one pull. You have to tighten the knot in sections. This section, and then this section, and you got to know which direction to pull it to get it to all tighten up right. That's what I watch for in these videos. And when I sit down and do one of these, that's what I'll sit and figure out. That way, they look good. Makes sense? But that's all there is. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just do this. I'm going to back out a little bit. And you can just watch my hands, and maybe this will help, maybe not. But I do this in a lot of my videos because I think this is the important unspoken part of tutorial videos. Watch the way they do it. Normally I wouldn't have fids on this one, But I did that here. Let me just take these fids off. I did that just so you could see the overs and the unders a little bit more pronounced. Now I'll put them on when I get down to the end, when it starts getting tight, and use them. But normally I wouldn't do it for this one. But let's see. We're going to go over 4 and under 2. Then we're going to go under 2 and over 4. Making sure the sides are even. All right. Now we're going to take that top one, the one that's closest to the buckle. It's the one that goes under 4 and over 2. And then the next one's going to go under 2 and over 4. You see how I did that? Now I'm going to pull them. Instead of pulling one and then pulling the other one, I'm going to pull them both out at the same time. It saves you a step. Makes it a little bit quicker. Pull them through now. Kind of give them a loose cinch. I'll hold here or down here at the buckle, kind of hold back and push at the same time with my hands. Give it another little cinch. And I always look at it, make sure, because I know me, once I do it and I get it and I start getting the technique and all that right, I'll notice the bracelet will sometimes get narrower. Why? Because I'm starting to pull it tight and I've figured out how to do it. So you got to be mindful. I can see it right now. These right here are a little bit tighter than these. And it's causing that bracelet to get narrow, and we don't want that. And plus, I'm stitching this thing, so I don't want it to be so tight I can't get my needle through. Right? But again, we take the one that's on the top, it goes under 4 and over 2. And this one goes under 2 and over 4. Now we got both our cords, and we can pull them off both through at the same time. Push it up. Pushing it toward the top. All right, we do it again. We take the one on the top and we go under 4, over 2. And this one goes under 2 and over 4. We grab both the loops and pull them. Do a little loose cinch, push it up. Always making sure the sides are right. Tension consistency, pushing it up. Yeah, that little gap is going to be there. Like I mentioned, where this piece that goes across the 4 strands on the top, over 4, and then under 2, there's a little bit of a gap right above it where you can see that core strand. Which, that's just the nature of the way this weave is, and especially using polyester. Do it again. We're going to go under 4, over 2, under 2, and over 4. Get both of them out and pull them. Loose cinch, push it up. Take that one on the top, go under 4, over 2, and the next one, go under 2 and over 4. And that's all there is to this one. Like I say, it's not a hard weave. It's a pretty fast weave. And I'll say this. This is one of those, it's kind of like a fishtail. I've heard people make this comment, and I understand. I agree with this observation about the fishtail. When you're doing the fishtail, has a tendency, if you don't hold it, and when you go to tighten it up, if you don't hold it, it'll kind of want to loosen itself up right there. So when you pull them, you kind of have to hold the fingers and do it. Make sure you're constantly holding what you've already woven, so those last ones don't come loose. You see what I'm saying? And like I've said in the past, I don't have one on hand right here, but I have some of these type clips right here. Obviously, the one I would use is smaller, but if you need to take a break on something like that, you can always take your clip and just hold it, and it'll kind of hold everything in place. You can get up, you can walk away, relieve your hands, and then you come back. That makes sense. But this is the tip I'm getting to. On weaves like that, and this one is like that, if you use a jig, and I'll say this, if you don't have a jig and you're going to do this seriously and you want your stuff to look good, I recommend a jig. Make you one, buy you one, use a jig, okay? But on like your fishtail, trilobites, this one, it comes into play. It doesn't want to stay tight. When you set your jig up, if you tighten this thing up as tight as you can get it, so there's some tension right here, it causes these core strands to be so tight that when you pull it through and you push it up, the core strands are so tight together that it holds it in place in itself. And you don't have to worry so much of it wanting to come unraveled. Now, on a fishtail, yeah, it's still going to do it. Even no matter how tight I pull this cord, it's still going to want to do that. But not as much, because I've pulled the tension so tight on this thing. Does that make sense? That's it. Make sure everything looks good on the sides. And on some of these weaves, not so much this one, but every now and then I'll do a little bit. You can take it, and instead of looking at it from this angle, tilt down and look up the sides of it, and you can see more so if there's any. Does that make sense? And also, you can flip your jig over, kind of, and look at the back side of the bracelet to make sure, because a lot of times you may make a mistake and you don't realize it. Sometimes it doesn't affect the display side, but it'll be noticeable on the back side, on the non-display side, the underneath side. But every now and then, flip it over and look at it to make sure that everything looks right. It's just good habits, because sometimes, I know sometimes there's certain weaves you'll do, and like I say, you don't realize there's a mistake from looking at it here, because it's not so noticeable. But if you look on the back side, you'll go, ooh, I see it. You can fix it before you get way down here and have to unweave everything. So every now and then, just look at the back of the bracelet. Look up the sides of it to make sure, angle it up. Yeah, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I say this to people all the time. Take it and look at it like this, and look down the side of this, and you can see if it looks. You can see where one will stick out further than the other one. A lot more so at this angle than looking at it straight ahead. Does that make sense? Just the little things that I constantly do to make sure these things look good. Under 4/2. Under 2/4. That's it. That's all there is. This bracelet is pretty simple. And if I wasn't sitting here talking, explaining all this, I could have been done by now. The bracelet is simple. It's the stitching itself that takes a little bit of time. Now, if you're going to do like this one right here, where you just run this one single piece of accent up under there, that's not hard to do at all. I'll show you how I'm going to do it when I get to there, but that doesn't take long at all. Now, when you start doing all this kind of stitching, that's where the time comes in. But like most people say, it's the stitching that make it pop. You can take, we've all seen the meme. You make a basic cobra bracelet, nobody bats an eye. But you make a stitched cobra bracelet, and everybody's like, woo! Yeah, it's the stitching that makes one of these things. It makes it look so good. Look at that. Stealth olive, like my wife, she'll say. She don't like these olive drab. She doesn't necessarily like these colors. She always says, I said, you don't like olive drab? She says, no, because it's so drab. She wants, like most females, she wants bright colors. She likes the bright colors. Well, typically men don't want all that bright yellow. They don't want all that. No, some do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, but you can take a bracelet, a lot of times, like in the case of this,
I'll use black as the base of a bracelet, and the bracelet's nothing. It's just simple, easy, whatever. But it's my canvas in which I'm going to put my art on, which is the stitching. Case in point, you know, basic bracelet, no big deal. But you put that stitching on there, and it pops. It gets people's attention, and it looks good. I don't know how many times I'm out in public wearing some of these things, and I have somebody say something to me. My gosh, that's so intricate. Like my wife, when I made this one, she's like, "Oh my gosh, that thing's intricate." I said, "Yep, it takes quite a few hours to make one of these, but they look so good. It's because of all the stitching." But that's just weave. It's not a hard weave. Let's see, under 2 and over 4. It's not a hard weave. Once you get the bracelet down, making them, the overs and unders, how to tighten it up and get it all looking good, that's when you start doing the stitching. The first time I make a bracelet, the first time I try out a new weave that I've never done, first thing I do is grab a piece of scrap microcord and my stitching needle, and I start poking holes in it, trying to figure out, where can I stitch this? How can I do this? What looks good? How does that microcord sit in relation to the grain of the bracelet, the grooves? Does it, I see a lot of people, well, I ain't gonna say a lot. I see some people, they do stitching on a bracelet, and well, it looks good, but their stitching just looks like a random bunch of... Now, there's a pattern to the stitching, but the stitching doesn't complement the weave of the bracelet. It's like the stitching is just all over the place, and I'm like, while it looks good, it draws your eye to it, to me, personally, it looks better when your stitching complements the grain of the weave, if that makes sense. The way it's woven together, if your stitching kind of follows that, and it accentuates the weave. Makes sense? That's my opinion, though. And everybody's got opinions, and you know what they say about opinions, right? But there you go. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to this one. I know I've talked a lot, but make you one and try out some stitching. There's all kind of ways to stitch. Don't be intimidated by stitching. It takes time, but the more you do it, you'll get better at it. And I've come to love stitching. Like I say, I'll make a new weave. First thing I do is pull out my stitching needle, start trying to find, where can I stitch it? How can I do it? What will look good? This, that, and this bracelet right here, there are so many variations of what can be done. You can do one color. You can do the bracelet in 2 colors, and then come back with the stitching or whatever. So many different little variations. So anyway, I'm going to weave this one out to the end. When I get down to the end, I'll show you how I finish this one off, and then how we'll do some of the stitching on it. So stick around, and I'll be right back. Okay, everybody, I'm back. I got this thing woven out. To finish this thing off, it's not that hard. It kind of comes down to where you end at. Because, as always, you want to keep the end of the bracelet in the same look, motif, style, whatever, as the meat of the bracelet. So in this one, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this, and hopefully I can explain this so this will make sense as to what I'm doing. Okay. What I've done, I've got this one right here. This is the one that would go under 4 and then over 2, right? Now this one, it goes under 2 and it goes over 4, right? And in the regular repetition of things, they would both get wrapped around this outer edge over here. Okay, but what we're going to do, because we're right here at the end of the bracelet and we don't have very much room left on these core strands, this is what I've been doing. Okay, we're going to take Yeah, let me make sure I'm going to say this right. We're going to take this one right here. Now, just when you get down to the end of this, just look at it and figure it out. But as always, like I always say, we want our ends of our cord to be on the back side. That way the cut and burn is on the non-display side so we don't see it. We don't want them on the top. We don't want them on the side. That's not neat. We don't want that. We want them hidden. Okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to take this one. In this case, it may be slightly different depending how you end and how much you got left. You just work it out. This is where I know when I first started doing this, I always wanted to say, well, how did they end their bracelet? Well, sometimes where they end in the weave is not the same place you end in the weave. So you kind of got to improvise this part. I know I would always wonder, how do they start it? How do they end it? How do they start it? And how do they end it? Now, I don't really care so much because I know I'll figure it out when I get down there. And I'm going to make it look good. Right? So what I'm going to do here on this one, like I said, we're going to take this one. And this would be the one that went over 2. So we'd go under 4 and over 2. Right? Then I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to come up right through here. Right there. Like I say, it's going under 4, and it's not going to go over 2. You'll see. I'm going to pull it up though, like you normally would, and that gives us this wrap to maintain this small wrap around, right? Okay. Now what we're going to take this one, and we're going to come back this way, and that's going to kind of fall in line. That wrap is going to fall in line with the ones that are going almost all the way across the bracelet. We see that? Now, it's not going to look exactly the same, but it's close, right? Now, this one, all we're going to do with this is, we see the one just above it is the one that goes almost all the way across the bracelet. And you have the short wrap, the long wrap. The short wrap, right? We're going to make this a short wrap. All we're going to do is just go around the end of the bracelet. And that's it. That's all there is to this one. Wait a minute, that's not right. Okay, I said that backwards. We've got them up here. We're going to take this one. We're going to go. This is the one that comes around this side. Goes under 2 and over 4, and we're going to wrap it around. On this one, we're just going to that way. That way, it will maintain the same. Look, that's what I'm going for. See, that looks better that way. And I'll say this. You may not be able to see this on camera, but how I was saying, there's like this little gap in here. It's not that bad, and it's actually part of the bracelet. It's just because this is polyester and it's a little stiffer. But I noticed when I set this thing down and I'm looking at it at this angle, I can see all the way through the back side of that bracelet. You see them holes in there? Down each side? That's just that gap in there. Now, you can't see it when you look straight ahead, but when you look at it at an angle, I noticed that earlier. And it didn't do that with the nylon cords, only the polyester. Why? Because it's stiffer and it just works different. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just like that. Like I said before, somebody said, which one's better to work with? The question is not which one's better or best. The goal is to learn to work with both of them. And then to learn with nylon and polyester mixed in one bracelet. Now, that can be, But that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to just wrap those around and I'll back weave them up under the back. But I've got this thing on here, and I've got a considerable amount of scrap left over, which is fine by me because I want to finish the bracelet. Like I've said, always overestimate and take notes, and that you can adjust your notes afterwards. But that way you can finish the bracelet. It's one of the most frustrating things in the world to get about this far down and realize I don't have enough cord to finish it. I'm going to run out of cord. Because me personally, I am not going to splice together mid-weave 2 cords to finish. That's not going to happen. That's not neat, clean. No. I want my cord long enough, right? But I left it on the jig, and I show this. I always show this. Talk about how much tension. Watch the gap in here when I unclip this. See, it's almost 1/4 of an inch. That's how much tension was on that thing. Okay, we're going to do that. I'm going to show you this. Get the jig out of the way. Uh-oh. Get the jig out of the way. Ooh. Alright. Before you lay brush down, make sure you got a clean work spot so you don't get dust and lint and whatever you might have on your off. That way when you flip your bracelet over. Here, let me zoom back out a little bit. That way when you flip your bracelet over and lay it down, you don't pick it up and have a bunch of dirt and dust and lint and stuff on it. Okay, so let's make sure we get this thing right. The display side, and we're going to flip it over. Yeah. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'll zoom back in so you can see how I do this. Let me see. If I turn this light on, will that help a little bit? Yeah, that helps. That always helps a little bit. Maybe. A little bit. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, and if we look, let me hold this up here so you can see this. We see how we have these the two long wraps, or I should say the long wrap. It comes around the edge and it goes almost all the way across the bracelet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run up under 2 of them. Right? And it's a tight fit right there. But it can be done. And that's where everything's going to get anchored into one point. I like to have all my cut and burns in one location. Not one here, here, and here. Have them all in one place. That way when you go to cut and burn, you cut them and you go to burn them, they all melt together into one lump. And there's no way that's going to come unwoven over time. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to just take one side. It doesn't matter which. Got a knot in my cord. Got to get that out. Okay? Like I always say, be mindful of your twist. A lot of times you can run your finger down that cord. See, there's a twist right there. And get that twist out. And then come over here. Like I say, I'm going to go up under this one and under this one. But they're only meeting right here in this little middle part. So it's kind of a tight fit. But you can get it at an angle and you can get up under there. And you can go through right there. And pull it through. When you get down here to close to the, the end, make sure there's no twist in it. And when you pull it, make sure it wraps around where you want it to. Does that make sense? And then just pull it. Kind of press it down and pull it. Right? And then get that one out of the way. And we're going to do the other one the same way. And since it's on this side of the bracelet, we're going to run it on this side. So these two, where they're back woven into the bracelet, they'll sit next to each other as opposed to on top of each other. We'll try to keep it as flat as we can. Again, grabbing it and running your finger out, and that'll get rid of most of the twists. You can come up here. See? We'll just run it through. Pulling it through. Get down to the end. Make sure you don't have any twists. Make sure it's wrapping where you want it to. Pull it through. And since we're stitching this, I always say this, since we're stitching this, leave you a little bit. Leave enough that it's not going to accidentally work itself out as you're flipping and flopping, stitching and all of that. But you don't want so much that it's going to be in the way as you're stitching. You try to alleviate that. So leave you about, an inch, 2 inches, something like that. And then you can take this. This is what I do. I'll back out so you can see this. Like the first time I've done a weave, and I write down, okay, I'm going to use 20 feet. That's what I cut for this. It's 20 feet, right? And I'm making this for a 7 3/4 inch wrist. First off, I'm going to cut and burn these. Cut and burn them. Get them open. Reach up here. Lightly. Don't put a lot of pressure on it. Just give it a second to cool off, and then just run your fingers down it, and it tapers the end of it. Do the other one. Same way. Rotate that cord in the flame. Get it hot. Get it melty. Give it a second to cool off a little bit. We don't want to burn our fingers. And then reach up here and just... And usually if you do it, you get into the habit of doing it right, it'll taper that end just right, and you can stick a fit on it. It'll tighten right up. But with all that, now we do this. Now I'm not going to taper these because these are going to get cut off. But I am going to melt these ends so they don't get frayed. And then we'll just let that sit there and cool naturally. But like I said, I cut 20 feet for this. Let me see how much I got left. That's 2.5 feet on that one. Should be about the same on this one. Yeah, this one's a little bit more than 2.5 feet. But relatively, it's about 2.5 feet on either side. So I had 20 feet in the get-go. You could take off 3 feet and you would still have enough. But you got to take into consideration, I made this for a 7 3/4 inch wrist. Well, make note of that and how much cord you use. That way, if you make one for a bigger wrist, you know, maybe I need to add a little bit more cord to it. Or if I'm making it for a smaller wrist, I can take a little bit more off. But I always overestimate it on my cord length, and then when I go to cut it, even if I've got my numbers written down and go make another one, I always like, maybe I'll add another foot to it. I know that's going to work, but I'm going to add a foot. Why? Because I want to be able to finish this thing and know I have enough. I have no problem with having a 7-foot piece of scrap I cut off, as long as I know I can finish this thing. It's the most frustrating thing in the world. You get nothing out of it except the practice of making a weave. You can't finish the product because it's not neat and it's not clean when you splice the stuff together. Make sense? But we'll take these, we'll get them out of the way, put them in my scrap bucket, my little handy dandy fid holder I have over here that I keep on my desk. I'm going to put these pieces of scrap down here in my scrap bucket. Yeah, just so everybody knows, I've got my shop set up. I don't have to move from here. Once I cut my cord and I sit down, I don't have to move. I've got my micro cord right here next to me. My fids right here in this little holder thing. My scissors, everything I need is right here. I don't have to get up and go moving around. It makes it a lot easier. And I have a shop, so I have everything. I don't have to pull out a bunch of toolboxes and unpack stuff. I'm in a shop, and it makes it so much easier. Like I said to somebody, they showed me their setup, and they had all these boxes and toolboxes and storage units and stuff. And I'm like, I said, I get it. You don't have a room in your house devoted to a paracord workshop, paracord studio, if you will. I said, unpacking all that stuff, preparing to make a bracelet is a job in and of itself. And then to think, when you get done, you have to pack it all back away and out of the way. If you're as serious into this, set you up a workstation somewhere. If you have an extra room, make you a studio. Do all this. It makes it so much easier. Now, if you're just a weekend warrior and doing it on the weekend as a hobby, no problem. Nothing wrong with that. But if you want to get serious, you need to set you up a designated workspace. That way, it's efficient. And you're not spending time packing and unpacking and doing this and doing that. It makes it a lot easier. Okay. All that said, let's see. Okay, on this one, I'm going to do this one in a a monochromatic theme, meaning basically all one hue but in different tints or shades. It's going to be, this is Stealth Olive, which falls into the olive green, olive drab category. I've got a few colors that fall into this. This is Stealth Olive, which is it's a darker. It's a little bit darker than regular olive drab. A little bit darker. Then I've got Army Green, which is not quite as dark as the olive drab. And then I have Moss, which is a very good color to stitch with on this Stealth Olive. Why? Because it still falls into that olive hue, but there's enough of a contrast between the two that you can see it. And I've even got this one. It's called Holy Guacamole. It's even lighter. It's even lighter. And I don't use it very often. But it does work. I have used it a few times on this Stealth Olive, but it's so much of a difference. But we're going to use Moss today. And we're going to do this. I thought about doing this. Where's the one? Yeah, here it is right here. I thought about doing, like I say, you got these two pieces running down that you can't quite see. And then you have this wraparound stitch, and then you have this zigzag stitch, right? So basically you got three elements we're working with. And potentially you could do them all in three different colors. And I thought about doing the two pieces that are running up under there going down, that and the zigzag in one color, and doing the wraparound in another color. And I thought, nah, let's not do that. Let's just go with all the same color. And the stitch, every bit of the stitching, all three elements are going to be the same. They're going to be Moss. That's what I've chosen. Because there's enough of a contrast. Alright, so, okay, on this one, once you do this and you see how it works, I found it to be easier to do it in the order I'm going to do it. Now, maybe for you it might be easier to do it another way, but I'll say this. That zigzag stitch there in the middle, you've got to have those two pieces running the lengthwise of the bracelet in order to do it. You can't do it unless you have those. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is put those in there. I've already got them cut, and in this case I've got 95. I would prefer it to be 275, but I don't have this color in 275, so we're going to work with what we got. We got 95, it'll work. No problem. But what we're going to do is, a lot of you may have seen this. I've done this on quite a few bracelets. All we're going to do is we're going to come from the non-display side, the back of the bracelet. We're going to run it through, and then we'll just run it up under every one of those. When we get to the top, we're going to run it back down through. So we want a piece. In this case, I've cut 18 inches. That's going to be way more than I need, but I know I'll have enough. You see what I'm saying? The reason I cut so much, that way, when you come out the back side of the bracelet, you've got enough room that you can turn that fid back over itself and stitch it back down into the bracelet. Because if you only got this much slack, you can't get that fid down there. You want enough so you can turn that fid back on itself. This is a helpful hint. Whenever you leave a piece that you got a back weave or something like that, always leave enough that you can turn that fid back on itself. The length of the fid plus about an inch. That way you have some room to get it where you need to put it, and then you can back weave it. Makes sense? Okay, so on this one, all we're going to do, let me zoom in and I'll show you. All we're going to do is where we've ran these, back woven these into the bracelet, that's where we're going to anchor it at. That's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to just go through the same spot, but I'm going to go through this side, this way, from this direction, and run it through, and then I'm going to come up through the bracelet. And you got to do it twice. So just remember, you've got one on this side of the bracelet and one on this side of the bracelet. So when you run them through back here, just kind of keep them orientated that way. It doesn't matter which one you do first, but I'm going to do this side first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through right here. And if you notice, the way these two cords are together, there's a little gap right there. And you can usually get right through there. See how it went right up under both of them pretty easy? We run it through. Now, since this is the anchor, we're back weaving it right now, so we don't have to leave a whole bunch hanging out. We can take most of it up, right? Like I was saying, you want to have enough to be able to fold that fib back over itself and plus an inch or so. Well, you don't have to do that here because that's already the back weave. Does that make sense? But now, what we're going to do here is we're going to come through, and a lot of times, let's see. I'll show you on this one. You can probably see it. If you look real close, you can see where that, you can see running this direction. There's a piece of 275. You can see it in between every one of these. But it's coming from the back side of the bracelet. It's coming up through the bracelet behind this black piece right here so you can't see it. So we're going to come up through here. And it doesn't matter if it comes out on this side or on this side. As long as you get it to the front, then you can go up under that piece. I'll show you what I'm talking about. We're going to get it through. You got to kind of look at it and see where's the best way to get it through there. And a lot of this, I'll tell you, a lot of this is me just holding it under the light. And this thing's got a magnifying glass on it. Comes in real handy. You can hold that thing under that magnifying glass and you can get down in there and look real close at it and see. It helps when you first, me especially, when I'm doing my stitching experiments. Oh yeah, that magnifying glass comes in very handy. But once I do it and I get it, figure out how and what angle and all that to do it at, I can pretty much do it. But this one, let's see, we're going to go through. Let me hold it over here in the light so I can see. I'm going to go through right there, I think. I think that will get it through where I want it. Yep. I just went through, wherever. And it's going to come out right there where I want it. And remember, like I said, those gaps in there, a lot of times you can take advantage of those gaps when you're stitching. But we're going to get it up. And we're going to make sure, this is very important right here. When you're doing this part right here, especially the run up, we don't want no twists in this. We don't want no twists in our cord ever. Okay. Now see, it kind of disappears up inside there. But right here, this is key. When you go to do this, to run this cord up under here, if you get a twist in this cord and it's up under here, you'll notice it. Now, somebody else, once you do all the stitching around it, it won't be as noticeable, but I know to me, it drives me nuts when I see there's a twist in this piece of cord just running up under there. I can't stand that. So what I'll do is I'll take it, like I said, you can take it and grab a hold of it and run your hand to the end. And you can it'll get most of those twists out. And you can look at the threads in that piece of cord and make sure there's no twists in it. And then you just come down. And what I'll do is I'll run it up under 3, 4, 5 of these. Depends, if they're real tight, you can't do 2 or 3. One at a time if you have to. But I try to do as many of them as I can. And this one I think is going to be pretty easy. I'll turn it toward me. I'll kind of just work it under there. You can see how it's going up under them. And I notice, you see how I'm bending it up. It allows it to go up under this next piece a little bit easier. See what I'm saying? Now once you get it under there, you bend it the other way, and you can get it that way. You stick it out that way. You can grab a hold of it. See what I'm saying? You can grab a hold of it and pull it. Now, this is the way I'll do this. I'll lay this down. And I'll make sure, don't pull it all the way, but get it up here like this. Make sure it's not twisted before you pull it. That way there's no twist. And you can look at it. Hopefully you can see this on camera. I don't know if you can see the actual thread and grain inside that piece of 95. I can look at it and see it's not twisted at all down through there. And that's what we want. That's what all that's about. I'll grab a hold of it again. We'll do it again. Run my hand up. Make sure there's no twist in it for the most part. And then just don't rotate your fid. Hold it like you had it and go straight down and go up under. Once I get it up under, I'll turn it to myself. Just kind of work it. And this being polyester and stiff, this stuff's a little easier to stitch. I'll be able to get it up under that one more. Yep, get it up under there like that. Bend it back so you can get a hold of the end of it and pull it. Lay it back out flat. Before you pull it all the way through, make sure it's not twisted. It's not going to have a twist in it. Alright, we see that? We just do it again. Now, depending on how tight you wove this, now if this was a piece of nylon like this is, yeah, it was a little harder to get it up under there. It wasn't hard, but it didn't go under there as easy as this one does. See how easy this is going up under there? Again, be mindful of those twists. Make sure there's no twist in it, and just. Now we're going to go up under these last two. There's two more right here. We're going to go up under. Right. Now once we get it up under there, if you look at it, like I say, you can always hold that thing at an angle and look, and to see if it's straight. I can look at it and tell right in this area it kind of goes, it's got a little wave to it. What I'll do is I'll take it and just kind of give it a little tug, and it'll straighten that thing out. Now again, we make sure we don't have a twist in it, and all we're going to do here is go through the back of the bracelet. Yep, there you go, that'll work. I mean, it doesn't really matter where it goes through as long as you just get it through. See? Now on the back side, we're going to do the same as we did down here. We're going to run it up under these two longer pieces that cross right there in the middle. Go up under one. And then go up under the second one. Let's see that. Let me just pull it through. Right? Now you see how much I had left. Way more than I needed, but I was able to do it. And since I'm going to be stitching, I don't want this. I'm going to cut this, but I don't want too much of it out. About an inch or so. Cut it off. Like that one. You know what? Let me put some fluid in this. I had somebody ask me about this, about these lighters, and they said something about spilling fluid. I'm like, no, you can't spill this fluid. It's gas. It's butane. I'll say this too. I probably should do a video on this. People ask me, where do you get your lighter from? It's the cheapest one I get from the local gas station. These things are almost disposable. Why? Because the igniter, click, 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 that causes the spark, those things are notorious for not lasting. They go out. After so many uses, they just stop working. Or the thing gets misaligned in here, and it won't ignite anymore. So, I don't care if you spend top dollar for one of these fancy dancy ones. If you drop it or that thing stops, it's worthless. So, I don't suggest spending a lot of money on one of these things. Buy the cheapest one at your local gas station. And they're refillable, right? And it's a gas. You hold it upside down, and that thing is it's gas. It's pressurized, right? But make sure that the nozzle will fit onto the valve. Sometimes they don't fit, and they have these little adapters. These are breakaway adapters down in there that will fit on the top of this, and it'll cause it to fit on that thing, right? But here's the deal. You can buy the cheapest lighter you want, but make sure you buy the high quality butane. I'm not going to mention any brand names, but I bought one that is a well-known and reputable brand of lighters, and their fluid was crap. That was the problem. I put it in there and the thing wouldn't light. Wouldn't light. And I started doing some research and I found out it was that product. That butane by that company. No good. And they said, everything I read said, buy the premium butane. 99.999% pure. They've taken most of the impurities out. That's where it ain't the lighter. Buy the cheap car, but put the best gas in it. But you just put it on here, and you can't spill this stuff. It comes out in gas, and it evaporates. But you just... And that's it. It's full. And they tell you to wait a little bit for that gas to stabilize in there, which, you know, that is a good practice. Now, this thing's going to make a liar out of me. Watch. But this thing doesn't have a big tank, so it doesn't take long to eat. See? Right? We burn that, and this little piece right here, it's too small. I'm not going to save this. Man, it's about what? 5-6 inches long. It's not long enough for me to do anything with. Now, all we're going to do now, we're going to put a feed in a holder, and we're going to do the other one we've already got prepared. Same length or whatever. We're going to do it the same way. But on this one, we're going to run it on the other side. So let's zoom in. You can see me do this. Alright. Now we're going to run this one in that same spot, but we're going to try to keep it on this side because we're going to do it on this side of the bracelet. Make sense? This one, let me get the scissors out of the way. Put the lighter back over here. Get all this stuff out of the way. Okay, so we're going to go up under these two. Just like we did. Bam. Just like that. We'll run it through. Pressing that back down. I say that a lot. Press that back down. That way there's some resistance. So when you go to pull it, you don't automatically pull it all the way through. Just be mindful and don't pull it all the way through. Okay, now we're going to do this one the same way. And this one, see how where it come from the back side through was up under this piece right here, and you can't really see it. Well, we're going to see it on this one, but we're going to do it in such a way. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. See, I've got it going under this piece and this piece. Well, where I want it to go through is right here. So I'm going to come back up under. Right here. Basically, I'm going to pull it back from going up under that piece. Right? Uh-oh. Don't get it too short. I hold those with my thumb, and I'm gonna go through, get the twist out, and go through right here. See where it comes through? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run it through. Got a twist in it. All right. Follow it to the end, get the twist out, and then I'm gonna come back right here. And just go up under. And when I pull it through, it's going to pull it up under there, and you're not even going to see it where it's coming through the bracelet. You'll see it. I'll pull it and it'll disappear in there. You see what I'm saying? It just disappears underneath there. I mean, if you look at it, you can see it at an angle, but when you look straight at it, you don't see it. All you see is it running up. Alright, so now we're going to run our finger to the end, get the twist out. We're just going to do it again. Alright, pull it through. Make sure before you pull it all the way down, it doesn't have a twist in it. It's got a little bit of a twist right there. I'll probably get that out though. Yeah, because it's not so tight. Now, like I said, running that piece up under there, what it does is it causes these little, the bridge, I guess, the piece that's going over the top, of the 550 that's going over the top, it causes it to bulge up a little bit. It gives it a little bit of definition. Somebody commented on one of the posts. They said that the stitching gives it definition. Yes, 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 it does. It actually brings that piece up and gives it, you know, some relief. But when you stitch with the grain of it, it accentuates and makes the weave itself more noticeable. Does that make sense? The weave of the bracelet doesn't get hid by the random stitching that I so often see people do, as opposed to the stitching accentuates the weave of the bracelet, complements it. Run it up under there. When you do this, make sure it's not wrapped around the back side. That's it. That's all there is to this one. Now, like I say, you can leave it like that. You can do like I've done on this one. Even though it's not inverted like this one, it doesn't matter. You can do it either way, regular way or inverted, it doesn't matter. You can put that piece, in this case it's burnt orange, or in this case it's moss, and you can just leave it like that. That looks great. You can do the two-tone bracelet with that piece running up under there. I mean, there's so many options on this. That's one reason I love this weave. And the weave's not hard itself. It's not hard. It doesn't take very long. It's how much stitching you put in it. How much patience do you have? That's what it really comes down to. Now this one, let's see. We're going to run this one up. All we're trying to do is get it to the back side of the bracelet. Doesn't really... I can't see very well. Yeah, right there. That'll work. Just run it through right in. It doesn't matter. We just want to kind of... See what I'm saying? That's it. Now we're going to run it through up under, just like we did the other one, up under the same two pieces. See that? That thing's all twisted up, so I'm going to get them twists out in a second. Gosh. You see how I'm rotating the cord as I pull it. And boop, it'll get that last twist out. It'll pop out. Now, we do this in the same way. Maybe about an inch or so. Give it a little burn just so it doesn't get all frayed. Like I said, that right there, about 6 inches, not enough to really do anything with. You can save it if you want. I normally don't save pieces that are that short. Okay, now, fid back in the holder. Lighter back in the pocket. This is where, I've said this before, when you go to do stitching and you've got a long piece of microcord, you want to have a clean workspace. Now, if you could see what's outside the camera view, you would laugh. You'd be like, "Damn, he's a hypocrite." But this mat right here is pretty clean. Okay, for this, what we're going to do first, like I said, you can do these in any order. I always do this one first. Just because. It's the easiest one, do it and get it out of the way. And plus, everything else is going to go over the top of those two pieces running down through there. Here, let me do this. Okay. But, like I was saying, here I'll show you. I don't think I'm going to do it on this one. How I started up here on this, and I told you that the stitching that goes around the sides is one big long piece. You do this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. I don't think I'm going to do this first one up here. It kind of looks out of place, if you ask me. So I'm going to start on this one. We see that? I'm not going to run that stitching right up here on this one. I'm going to start on this piece. Right? Okay. But all we're going to do is come through the bracelet right here, and we're going to wrap it around, and we're going to go back through. And when it comes through, it's going to come out on this side, and we're going to wrap it this way. It's going to go through, and it's going to wrap around this way. Makes sense? So it's kind of like a figure 8 all the way down the bracelet. Now the zigzag stitch is another one. It goes here, goes over here, and then it goes up under that piece of, in this case, on this one is 95, on this one is 275. But it goes up under it, and it goes back across. See what I'm saying? It's just back and forth, back and forth. I'm going to do this one that wraps around the edges first, and that's the long piece. That's why I say, get your work area kind of clean. Now I've cut, what did I cut here? I think I cut this piece about 7 feet long. And that's going to be more than I need. Right? So just be mindful. I want to say it ends up being almost 5 feet, right at 5 feet is what you actually need to do this. I think. I can't remember. That's why I cut it 7 feet. I think the first time I did it, I cut a piece. It was either 6 or 7 feet, and I had some left over. And like I said, I've done so many of these in such a quick amount of time, trying to figure out all these different stitch patterns and stuff, because I had all these ideas and I wanted to get them on paper, if you will. I wanted to get them on the paracord so I wouldn't forget them. So I didn't make a lot of numbers. I didn't write a lot of stuff down, so I apologize. But I cut 6 or 7 feet of this. Let me make sure that's what I did. 2, 4, 6. Yeah, right at 7 feet. So, you know, stick around and you'll see how much I have left. But, give me a second. I'll be right back. Okay, folks, I'm back. Sorry about that. I know it was just a split second to you guys. I had a package delivered, and it's raining here, and I didn't want it to potentially get wet. So I went out there to get it. I got another package supposed to be coming. One's coming post office, and one's coming UPS. And this one was the United States Postal Service, and they put it in our mailbox, and our mailbox sometimes gets rained on. Now, really, what's going on here? Trying to open this up and see what I got. I've been wanting to order this for a while, I never had, and I finally got around to doing it. Because I've been doing so many of these bracelets with this 95 and 275 and stuff. I wanted to get it in this one color. Maroon. One of my favorite colors. And the only place you can get this that I know of is from Atwood itself, who makes it. Now, you can get some of their 550 and some of their 275 and some of their microcord from many other suppliers, but some of this stuff the other suppliers don't have. You have to go directly to Atwood to get. And I wanted to get some 95. I want some 275 in this color, but I didn't order it just yet. I had some other things I had to order too, so I had to prioritize, if you will. And this is just something I've been wanting to get so I can do, because I've been doing a lot of these bracelets with some of these different size cords, and I wanted this one. Now, yay, I get to sit down and spool this up, because I don't like it this way. I'll put it on a spool, which I'm sure I've got a spare one around here somewhere. I've got quite a few of them in use, and I got some that are almost empty that I could probably get, but I'll do that later. Okay, now for that, hey, just figured I'd throw that out there. Let me look at this. What is this? This is like the invoice, I assume. Oh yeah. No need to send me multiple pages and advertisements and okay, yeah, there's that. Okay, alright, to the stitching. I gotta say, this one right here, I cut a 7-foot piece. That's probably going to be more than I need. But like I said, I've made so many and so many different variations, and I didn't write down all the numbers perfectly. So, work with me here. I'll have all the numbers down in the description of the video, but right now I don't have them all written down for me. They're all in my head and everything like that. But I'm taking note of what I'm using on this so that the numbers will be, more accurate in the description below. Like I always say, what I say in this video may or may not know, but look to the description. That's where the most accurate calculation numbers and measurements and all that will be down there. Okay, now with that said, let's zoom in. I'm going to show you. Like I said, this stitching I'm going to do here, it's going to be, I know on here it looks like it's just one big long piece, but it's the two pieces of 275 that are running up through there like the spine pieces, right? Then there's this one that wraps around the edges, which is the same piece. It goes around this edge, then this edge, then this edge, then this edge, right? That's one long piece, and that's what we're about to do. Now, this piece in the middle, I know it kind of all looks the same, but it's not. You'll see when we start doing it that it's two separate pieces. But it zigs, where's my handy-dandy laser paracord pointer? Right over here, it goes across, up under that piece of 275 and back over here, and then up under it and back across. It just zigzags, and that's a piece in and of itself. Hence why I say there's so many possible combinations. There's 3 stitching patterns on this, and you could do all 3 of them in 3 separate colors. Makes sense? So there's so many possibilities, and there's even some other ways to stitch this thing that I've come up with that I haven't actually done yet. I mean, I've practiced them on my little practice piece. Yes, they work. I can do them, but I haven't actually made a bracelet with them yet. But I like this one the most, and a lot of people seem to like this one. And the other one I posted, which is this one. This right here is the same thing. It's just the main body of the bracelets in 2 different colors. But the stitching's the same, except this one doesn't have the zigzag down the middle, like this one does. But, you know, you can watch all this. Like I tell people always ask, I see this often, is there a tutorial for that? And I'm like, no. I said, do you know how to tie a diamond knot? They say yes. I said, do you know how to tie a snake knot? They say yes. I said, well, there you go. You have a tutorial right there. You already know how to do it. Now you have to incorporate all these different elements into one bracelet. That's where the creativeness comes in. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. Okay, how can I put them all together? How can I come up with something unique that incorporates all these different elements? Believe me, I spend many of hours thinking about this. I'd be in the house cooking dinner, and my mind is thinking, I wonder if I could do this. I could do it this way and do that and stitch it that way. I'm constantly thinking about this stuff. I had a friend of mine, he said something. I said, man, I eat paracord for breakfast. I said, that's what I do. Okay, the stitching on this one, like I said, this is the one I did, and I ran it. It follows the top. Let me get the light over here so you can see. This piece of black, this puffed up, raised up because that 275 is under it. That's the one we're dealing with. If you look at it, you can kind of see how it's got a little bumps on there. It's raised up a little bit. Right? Okay. That's the piece we're dealing with. We're going to follow the top of it around. Right? Okay. So up here, when I first did it, I followed that piece, the top piece. I'm not going to do that one like that today. I'm not going to ignore that piece. And I'm going to start on this side and follow the top of it around. Okay? That's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it over here. And I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, first off, get us a work area where we're good to go. We're going to come back here and we're going to do the same thing like we did before. We're going to anchor it in the same spot. I always anchor these things in the same spot. Okay, so we're going to run it up under these two. You see it right here, and then I'm going to get it up under this one also. Right? I'm going to push it through. Pull it, kind of press it down. And pull. Be mindful because you got a lot of cord, and you don't want to get overzealous. And pull it, and you pull it all the way through and have to do it again. Don't want to do that. So, you get down to the end, slow down a little bit, but leave you a little bit there. That way, if you accidentally pull it too hard when you first start stitching, you don't pull it all the way through, right? Leave you a little bit. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I want it to come out right over here. It's going to come out basically where this piece of green is. Right here in this piece of green that is under my fid, right? I'm going to follow the top side of it around in this groove. Right? So I want to come out right in here. So basically where this piece of moss green, the light green piece of 95 that's going through, that's where I'm going to go through at. So I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to go through, and you can see it. It's right up inside here. And it'll go through right there. We see that. Now I'll go ahead and tell you, I've noticed on this bracelet, because everything's so crunched together real tight at the top, these first couple of ones are going to be a little tricky to get it to go through in the right place. So just be mindful of that. It may be the case, it may not be the case. I know for me it was. But once I got down here into the meat of the bracelet, it wasn't that hard. And I also knew which angle and exactly where I needed to put it to get it to pop through there. And no problem. Now, it takes time to sit here and do all this, but once you get it, you got it. Right? So we're going to, sorry, I keep getting out of frame. We're just going to run that through. Right? We're going to pull a slat through. And we get down here to the end. Make sure, hold it right here with your thumb. And pull it. Alright? Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to follow it around that groove right there. Following the top of it. And where this goes through, it's going to go through, and it comes out right here. So we're going to come out on the top of this piece, but it's going to come out kind of up under. Let me see if I can show you this. You're going to stick this needle through, and it's going to want to poke through the back side of this. And we don't want to poke through it, but you're going to stick that needle through there, and you're going to look at that piece. You're going to kind of wiggle your needle a little bit, and you'll see, okay, I'm touching the back side of that. I don't want to touch it. So you'll angle your needle down. That way you'll come out right there. Where my needle is going in at is where we're going to come out at. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to show you. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. Let me zoom in. Here, let me do this. Let me zoom in, and maybe you can see this. Maybe I can get this on camera, and you can see what I'm talking about. I say this. I've said this, and I've said this, and I've said this, and I've said this. A lot of these lacing needles or stitching needles that you buy from suppliers here in the United States, they're good. Don't get me wrong. The ones you get off of Amazon or the more expensive ones you get from the different paracord supply places. I personally don't see a difference in any of them. Really, I don't. Now, some of them I found they're okay. They're not bad. But the tips of them, they may say blunted, but they're not actually that blunted. And they tend to poke through the cord a little bit easier. These are, I think they ultimately came from a company in Germany called, I think it's called Heckel, is where they ultimately came from. But I bought them from Paracord EU. This is a, what is this one? This is a Type 2 blunted end. Now I'm using it on micro cord. The actual one that would be for the micro cord is really tiny. I think that's right. This one's for, or is this one a nano? I forget. Look at, if you're interested in buying these, if you want to these things, they are well worth the money, well worth the shipping. If you stitch, these things are very worth it. It costs you money to get it shipped from Paracord EU, which is in Europe, the Netherlands, Amsterdam, in Europe. It's going to cost you to get them shipped. And these things are about $5 a piece, $6 a piece, give or take. But they are well worth it. They make it so much easier. Why? Because the diameter is smaller, and it is literally blunted. And you don't poke through your cord. It doesn't snag on the cord as easy. And I used this one because it's longer than this one. I don't like that short piece. I want the longer one. And I'll show you this. Here's a 550, a Type 3 fid that I bought in the States. Right? Here's the 550 Type 3 one made that I got from Paracord EU. Like I say, I think it came from a company called Heckel in Germany. If you look at this, look at the diameter difference. 550 will fit in both of these. But because this is such a more slim, a thinner diameter, it's easier to run it through the cord. It's not having to create such a big gap to get it to go through there. And the end of that thing is as blunted as it can be. It's not going to poke the cord as easy as some of these other ones. Now this one was a special. This one is specially made to be blunted, but they don't normally look like this, the ones you buy in the States. They have more of a pronounced point on them, and I can't stand that. You know, I thought, I wonder if these things are worth it, and I had somebody tell me they're worth it, and I took his advice, and I bought like two or three of these, and I used them. I'm like, wow, so much different. Now, I've got plenty of them. These are all Type 3s. I got another thing over here full of Type for my micro cord stitching. They're well worth the money, right? But it makes it so much easier. And the reason is what I'm about to show you. If I can get this on camera and you can see what I'm going to show you, this right here is so tactile feedback. You sticking it in there, you're groping through the darkness. You can't see what's in the bracelet. The only thing you can do is see how the cord's reacting, and you can feel with your hand where you're at. right? Hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'm going to stick this through here where we want it to go through. Okay, look. You see how that piece of moss is moving? It's because the tip of this needle is touching that piece of moss. And I'm not putting any pressure this way. I'm just wiggling it back and forth back here. But it's touching that, and I can see that it's moving it. That gives me a relative idea of where the tip of this thing is. But you can stick it through here. Look, watch this piece of green right here. You'll see it move up and down. Or, well, I should say from this side to this side. You'll see it move. Watch. See how it's moving? Why? It's because the tip of this needle is poking the back side of that thing. Now, I'm not putting enough pressure to go through it. Now, if I have those ones that are made in America that have more of a pronounced tip, even though they're supposed to be blunted, I run the risk of jamming it into that cord. You see what I'm saying? But with it blunted like that, it's not going to do it as easy. And I can feel my way through where I want it to be. And I can see that I'm on the back side of this. So what does that mean? That means back out just a little bit and angle it. That way I can get it up under. Does that make sense? That is what the stitching is for me. I will poke that thing through there, and I'll sit there and I'll feel. And I can feel it when it goes through in between the two cords. I can feel it when it goes into a cord, when I'm touching a cord, and it goes through the cord. Does that make sense? Now, I know after get-go, you're not going to be able to do all that. Tactile feedback, sensory perception, you're not going to get it all. But as you do it more and more and more, you're going to become, oh, yeah, I can feel it. I can feel it. I can feel it. And you'll go, that's where I want it. And then once it goes through, you just run it through. Does that make sense? I mean, that's the best way I know how to put it into words. Tactile feedback. You can feel it in that needle. And you can look to see that cord wiggling. You go, okay, I don't want to jam through that, so back out just a little bit and angle it. And get it through. Okay, so now, we got it through there, right? Got it wrapped around. Now, when we go to pull this thing, did I do that right? No, I didn't. I did it in the wrong place. All that bragging, me talking, I put it through in the wrong place. That's all right, though. We can fix it. We can fix it. We can fix it. Why? Because we ain't got a blunted tip. We can just run it back through. I put it through in the wrong place. But I showed you my point, though. See, I'm not perfect. I got to trying to explain something and lost where I was at in the stitch. Here, I can do it this way. I can do it this way too. Pull it through. When I get back right here, I just unscrew it. And it'll come right through. I then just put my needle back on. Because sometimes if you try to, oh, I put it in the wrong place, and you try to feed it back through, sometimes you'll get your cords crossed in there, and you'll get all tangled up. So, you know, you just have to be mindful. Hang on a second. Okay, yeah. I'll do this again. Okay, I'm gonna show you this one more time. But you saw how I did that. How it kind of wiggled, and you can feel it. But we're gonna run it around. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna come out down here up under this piece of cord. And just the way I stuck it through here, and I was wiggling, and I could see this piece moving, I'm gonna do the same thing on this one. That's what you have to do. Until you figure out exactly which angle and all that, you do that. Just be careful. That's where the patience comes in on this. But once you do it a few times, you get the angle, and you know which direction to put it in, what angle to put it, you know which direction to put it, where to put it in at, what angle to get it, and you can usually get it to go right through. Right? But we're going to follow this piece around. Like I say, we're going to come out right here, and we're going to follow the top right here, the top of this piece of cord. This piece of cord, we're going to follow the top of it. But we're going to come out right up under here. But we're going to wrap around here, following that top of that piece of cord, and we're going to go through right there. Now, when we go through here, now remember, I got these two pieces of 95 going up through there also, so I'm having to kind of go around them. Like I say, everything's kind of tight right here at the top, so, you know, you just be mindful. Get it. If I can usually get it started, I can get it in there. And, you know, sometimes you struggle and you can't get it through there. What you can always do is you can come back to the front and go through this way and kind of create the hole. Kind of create the hole. Kind of wallow it out a little bit. And then back it out and go back around to the back side, and then you can get it in there sometimes. Here, I can't see it. I'm trying to let y'all on the camera see it, and I can't see what I'm doing myself. Normally I got it over here so I can see, and I can't see it. But we see how I got it come out. It's kind of bent this piece of 550 up out of the way, see? But you see where it's coming out at. I'm just doing that to show you. And when I go to tighten it up, make sure you have this over here where you want it. Pull all that slack through. When you get down to the end, make sure you get your twists out. When you get to right here, just kind of take your finger and make it seat right there in that little groove we want it in. Right? And then I'll just go tighten it up. But don't do it so tight that it disappears in between them two pieces of 550. Right? And that's all there is to that. And we're just going to do it again on the other side. We're going to follow the top, flatten that piece back out. Follow it around. Now see, we got these pieces of 95 in our way again. Like I said, everything's kind of tight right here at the get-go. But once you do it, you'll get it. Get it in there. Bam, I felt it. I can feel it. Now look at this piece of 550. You see it moving? See where it comes? See where it's at right there? It's in the wrong. See where it's coming out? I don't want it coming out here. I want it coming out below it. So I'm going to back it out and I'm going to tilt it down just a little bit. And get that out of the way. See how it's starting to come through? Now it's coming through where I want it. See, and that's all it has to do with the angle I'm doing it. I had it down here at this angle. It was coming out above it. Back it up a little bit, put it at a different angle, and it comes out right where you want it. Makes sense? That's all there is to it. But once you do it a few times, you'll say, okay, I see the angle. I see how I got to do it, where I got to put it through. It becomes easier. Get down to the end. Get the twist out. Kind of get this part right here to seat where you want it. Make sure it's going to get in that groove right there. And then just give it a little. And then just seat right there where you want it. We're just going to keep doing that. See? We got one, we got two, now we're going to do this side. I'll just work our way down. And I guarantee you, it's going to be frustrating at first. That's why I tell people, patience, patience. But once you do it, notice where you're putting it at, what angle you're putting it in. And, you know, I will often use this magnifying glass. You don't have to have one, but it does make it a little easier. But I can look, and I'll take this thing, and I'll look down it, I'll look up inside that crack to see what I'm going into and where I need it to be and all that. And just kind of put it in there. See how easy that went through that time? Right where I wanted it to. Make sure you don't get wrapped around all these pieces. That's why I cut these all short so they're not so much in the way. You see how I put my finger on there? That'll help you get out some of them twists. Get it where you want it. Once you got it where you want it, give it a couple little pulls and it'll seat it right in place. And again, we're going to do it again. We're going to follow that, oops, sorry. We're going to follow that groove around. Oops, sorry, I'm all out of frame. I apologize. But we're going to follow this groove around. And we're going to go right through here. And if you see, now that I got past all that stuff, I'll show you this. We're going to follow this short one. See how it just wraps around the 2 core strands right there? And then you have the one above it that goes all the way across the bracelet. Okay, we're going to follow that groove around and we're going to go up under like that. Alright? Right through here. The same place this cord is going in between those core strands is where we're going to go through at. So we're going to take it. Like I say, I can't see where I'm at. There it is. Oop, I had it in there and it come out. You see, it goes like I say. It follows this groove right here around. It goes up under there. And it comes out right here. And we're going to follow the top side of this piece around. And that's it. Once you do it a few times, and you're not trying to hold it so the camera can see it and I can't see it. See, that's the problem in these tutorials. Often I'm trying to make it so the viewer can see it, but I can't see it very well. So now that I got it in there, just, let me make sure it's where I want it. I need to just kind of, that's it. We'll do it again. Go follow it around this way. Follow around this groove right here and go up under there. And it goes right through there. Like that. Follow it around. Follow that groove around. I'm going to go right through here and right through there. See how easy that was? Once you do it a few times, you'll see where it needs to go. You'll figure out the angle. You just got to do it. That's the thing. You just got to do it. And, you know, it may be slightly different on yours because you pulled it tight, you pushed it up more or less than I did and stuff like that. So it's slightly different for everybody. But when you do it, Get it right there in that groove. And let's give it a pull. You see it starting to take place, take shape. But that's all there is to it. Run it around. I'm going to stick it up in there. Bam, I felt it pop through, but it's coming out at the top. It's coming out where this other piece is. I know you may not be able to see the tip of it right there, and I don't want it there. I want it below that piece. So I'm going to back it out. I'm going to angle it down, and it comes out right there. Now, I'll say this. This is a good thing about polyester, being that it's so hard and stiff. You're not going to snag it as easy as you would regular nylon. So that does work to your favor. But like I said, which one's the best? It's not about which one's the best. It's about, the question is not which one's the best. The goal is to learn to work with both. We get it in that groove. And give it a little snug. Wrap it around. Follow that groove around. Up under right here. And bam, it comes out right where we want it. And you notice when I'm coming out toward the inside, like this piece of 95 that's running down there, I'm coming out on this side of it. Now when I'm doing the other one, I'm coming out on, you know what I'm saying? You want to come out in the center. You don't want to cross, you don't want to come out over here on this side of the 95 and go across the top of it. That's not the way I do it. Why? Because when we do the zigzag stitch, that's what we'll do. So we don't want this piece of microcord being in the way of where the zigzag piece of microcord is. Does that make sense? So we just run it through. And we just work it all the way to the end. And you just follow that piece of cord. That's all I do on these stitch jobs, is just follow that piece of cord all the way down through there. Wrap, back forth. Follow it all the way to the end. And when you get to the end, just run it back up under this back part. And then I'll come back and I'll show you how to do the little zigzag stitch, which it's pretty easy. The zigzag stitch is pretty easy. You just gotta be mindful not to jam your needle through any of the cords, just like any stitching. But I'm gonna run this out. When I get to the end, I'll show you me finishing it, run it up, and I'll start the zigzag, and we'll have this a modified inverted Zawbar stitched Zawbar with all kind of crazy stitching. But this one's going to look good right here when we get done. But I'll be back. Stick around. Okay, I'm back. I got this thing stitched out. Okay, before we go any further, my other package I mentioned, it showed up. I'll most likely do a what's in the box video for that one. It doesn't have a lot, but it's got a couple of things in it. During the break, I was checking my Facebook notifications, and in one of the paracord groups, somebody told me, they said, man, that's a great weave. They were referring to this one. They said, that's a great weave. I love it. We're waiting on a tutorial. So, and I told the gentleman, I said, I'm actually filming it right now to be on YouTube today or tomorrow. So with that said, I'm going to give you a shout out, Mr. Johnny. I'm not going to mention your last name. You may not even want me to do that. Mention you at all, so I won't mention the last name. I'll just say, Johnny, this one's for you. Okay, let's see, where were we at? We stitched it out. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this. I'm going to point out a couple things. Like I say, this one right here, there's so many options on how to stitch this thing. It boggles the mind. But let's zoom in and I'll show you. You can see that I've got it stitched out, except for the last run. I'll show you, and you can see I've got quite a bit of cord left. Let's see, what I say I cut. I think I ended up cutting a 7-foot piece from this. That's what I ended up cutting, and I've got just over 2 feet. So, you know, a 5-foot piece would have worked. Yeah, 5-foot piece. But we see that, right? We see what it looks like right there. Like I said, I didn't do we'll compare the two. You see how this piece of red up here just kind of, it looks out of place. That's why I didn't do it over here. See, it looks better this way, I think, without that piece of stitching up there. But that right there, in and of itself, looks good. But I'm gonna come back and show you how to do this little zigzag, which is pretty easy. This zigzag in the middle is easy. Doesn't take long, doesn't take a lot of thread. You just gotta be mindful not to poke your cord. But that's with any stitch job. But, okay, let's see. We're going to do this last one. We're down here to the last one. We're going to wrap it around just like we've been doing and run it through and go around this side. Okay, so let's get the end of our cord. Now, as always, when you get down here where all this jumbled mess is, it can be kind of hard to find where you need to go through, and it's usually pretty tight. So, you know, you have to be patient. Just like at the beginning, you got to be patient and find your way through it. But you can do it. I know you can do it. Just have patience. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to follow that groove around. And we're going to go right down through here. Now, like I say, this is tight, and I'm having to get around all these other pieces of cord that are in there that you can't really see. So, give me a second. I can get it through there. Like I say, I'm trying to show this on camera and I can't quite see. Okay, I can see where it's wanting to come out. It's wanting to come out right up here, but I want it down here, so we'll back it out a little bit. I'm going to try to angle it and get it down there. I think I did it right there. Maybe. I've noticed sometimes, especially when I was using this nylon right here, a lot of times, I had a tendency to, when it would come out up above and I wanted it down below that piece, and I try to angle it, sometimes it would want to snag that piece of cord. Well, what I can do, maybe I can show you on here what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can get this. Okay. I'll show you. You can see the tip of here. Let me get the light over here so you can see. You can see the tip of that fid right there where my fingernail is. It's on this. It's up here on this side. I want it down here on this side. So I'm gonna back it out, and I'm gonna put an angle on this piece back here. Now be careful, especially on these brass fids. They will bend. Those steel ones that most American suppliers, they don't bend very easily. But these, they'll bend. But you can bend it. And you can take your fingernail, or, you know, whatever. I usually just use my fingernail and kind of pry that piece up out of the way, and I can see it. See? And that, oh gosh, that's tight. And if it's real tight, I may be... Let me look at it. Hang on a second, folks. I'm trying to look through my magnifying glass to see. Okay, there we go. The reason it was so tight is it was going through one of those core strands that you can't see in there, which thankfully is inside that bracelet. You can't see it, but it happens. When you go to push it through, you can feel where the tape on that thread. See, on these, like the ones you buy in the States, the taper is real definite, but on these other ones, it's a slow taper. But when if you jam it through the middle of one of those, through an actual core strand, now granted, it's on the inside of the bracelet, you can't see it, you can feel it. Well, I can. You do it enough, you'll realize what you're doing. It'll go through that core strand, and as you try to push it through, and it starts to try to widen up that hole through the middle of the core strand, you'll feel it. It'll be tight as I'll get out. That's a sign you're probably piercing your cord, so back out and try to move it just a little bit. And that's what I did. Now it goes, see, I can push it through with my hand. Before, I couldn't get it through. Now, though, there are some times when it's just woven so tight that you can't get it through. And y'all may have seen me do this before. I can't push it through. You can put it on your hand and do it, but in the case of this, I risk the right chance of bending it. You can put it on the desk and push it down. But we pull it through. That's the last one. We're going to pull it through. We're going to get it where we want it. Get it right to it. Give it a little tug. Okay, now this last wrapper, and all we're going to do is wrap it around, and then we're going to run it up under these two pieces where everything else is anchored. That's all there is to that. See that? We just push it through. Pull it. We got to do the same thing though. When we go to pull it, make sure it's going to go in the place we want it. It's going to go right there in that little groove where you want it at. And then just give it a little tug. Hey, and that's it. Now, take it, cut it. Now that piece is long enough. I'll save that. That right there will be a when I make a weave I've never done, I'm gonna figure out how to stitch that. That's what that piece will be for. That's what it'll most likely get used for. Okay. So we're gonna put it down here in the micro scrap container. Okay, now what do we need? I've already got it. Yes, I've already got the other piece cut. So let's put our fids back over here where they go. We don't want to lose them. We don't want to drop them. Don't want to dang them up. Get our scissors out of the way. Okay, now this part right here, this, I'm going to back out so you can see this. Okay. This right here, it's not hard. The most difficult part about this zigzag stitch, now you can see, now that I've got them both done, you can see what I'm saying. This, how it goes across and it goes up under that piece of 270, or in this case 95. It'll go over the top of it and it'll go up under it back this way, and then up under it and back this way. And it just zigzags, zig back and forth. We work our way down. And it's wrapping around those pieces of 95. See what I'm saying? Like I said in the beginning of the video, there's 3 stitching elements to this. The 2 pieces of 95, that's one. And then this that we just did, that wraps around the edge, that's the second one. And now what we're about to do is the third element. Like I said, you do it in different colors, the same color. You know, you mix and match it. And there's so many ways. And this right here also, you could you just stop and think. And I have pondered this bracelet and pondered this bracelet. That's what yesterday was. I sat and thought about this and how I could do it. And, you know, the day before, I think, is the day I did the little practice run. This thing. Well, I was just practicing on it. And yesterday I started thinking, okay, I see all these ways I can stitch it. And I started thinking, well, I can put that stitch and this stitch together. Or I could do it this way and that way. And man, there's so many combinations on how to do this. And anyway, so I'll show you how I start this. This one's pretty easy, and we're going to end up finishing this one. Okay, I've got me a piece over here. I think I said I cut this thing 5 feet. And that's probably going to be Yeah, that's 5 feet. I cut this piece 5 feet. Again, we're using moss green, same as all this right here. The Stealth Olive is the bracelet, and everything else is moss green. Okay, so on this one, what we're going to do, if we look at it, we look at this one. We're gonna anchor it in the same place we've anchored everything else, and we're gonna have to go through. Now this is all tight because there's all that stuff's right here, right? But we're gonna go through, and when we go through, if you look and you can see this, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. Right there is that piece of 95, or in this case it's 275, the one that's running the length of the bracelet, right? When I come through, I want to come out on this side of that piece of 275 or 95 or whatever it is you're using. You want to come out on that side of it. So it's consistent with how it comes out down here and down here and down here. Makes sense? Consistency, uniformity. We want them all to look the same, right? And that's the tricky part, especially because you can't see what you're going through. Oh, sorry, you can't see what you're going through back here, so you got to be mindful. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it anchored back here. Now this one might be a little bit easier. We're going to see. Let's just get it anchored to start with. Let's run it through like we did everything else. Up under those 2 pieces we've already done. Alright? Like I always say, you can bend that buckle out of the way. Get it out of the way so you can get a... See what I'm saying? If you got that buckle up in the way, it gets in the way. You can bend it. You can always bend your bracelet. Just be mindful. You can bend that bracelet to get it out of the way so you can get that... The bracelet will bend, the needle does not bend. Well, we don't want it to bend. It makes sense. So bend the bracelet out, get it out of the way so you can get the needle through there. Now, hold it down. Pull your slack through. Leave you a little bit. Okay, now, let's see if I can't do this. I should be able to get that to go through, I think. Shouldn't be too much of a struggle. If I'm not mistaken, right here where it's coming out, this piece right here that I'm working with, where it's coming out, I'm going to just go right back down through that same hole. Yeah, you can see where it's coming out. And it's coming out on that side. I mean, either way, it doesn't matter because that piece of 95 or 275 is going up and then it's curling back down. But we want to stay on that side. Why? Because that's how we're going to do the rest of them. You'll see. But just get it through there like that. Pull your slack through. Bam. We got it there. Hold it here, pull it. Okay, now, what we're going to do. Now, this piece of green, every piece of green, the long pieces that wrap around and go across the over half the bracelet, right? We're going to follow the bottom side of it. What we're going to do, we're going to go across like that. But then we're going to come back and we're just going to go up under that piece of, in this case, 95. It could be 275, it could be 95, it could be 100. You could have a piece of 550 in there. I haven't done it that way. I haven't done this stitch with a piece of 550 right there yet. I most likely will, but I haven't yet. It's the same principle. Okay, now I'm going to show you. I'm going to zoom this in and I'm going to show you. The reason I say this, listen to this right here. It's something I discovered when I was doing this. And it was, there's a couple of bracelets I've done. I don't remember which one it is off the top of my head. But the nature of the way the thing's woven together, see if I can explain this. The nature of the way it's woven together is you got one cord running over the top, and where you're having to go up under it, and where you need to go through to get to the back of the bracelet is behind that cord, right? And I found that where that cord is, and you got to go up under it, and then the hole you're going through is up under that cord. My first time doing it, I put the piece of the fid up under it, and I tweaked it up to get it to go in that hole. And what I noticed is it moved that piece of cord out of the way. And it did it all the way down that, and I had to go back and fix it, right? And I was like, there's got to be a better way. Well, there's an added step. You run it up under that piece of cord, and you pull it out, and then you come back, because it's easier to get to that hole that's up under that cord from this side of the bracelet, or from this side of that piece of cord. So you could go down this way, and it would go through it. And you had all this, when you pull it through, you had all this slack, and then when you went down through the bottom of the bracelet, and you went to pull it, all that slack sucked up under that piece of cord, and you didn't see it. But it was an extra added step. I want to say it was in the last video I did. I don't even remember what weave it was. I don't remember. But does that make sense? And the reason I did that added step is because when you tried to go up under that piece of cord and angle it to go down through that hole, it tweaked the cord out of the way. And it didn't look right. So you'd go up under the cord, pull your slack through, and then you come back and you go down through that hole from this side of that cord, and it would go through. And then when you did, it just, all the cord disappeared into the, down there, and you couldn't see it. Okay. Initially, when I did all this, that was the issue I potentially saw coming. Trying to go up under this piece of 95 right here. Because if you try to go up under it and you start tweaking it, it's going to pull it up out of place, and you want it to stay seated in that little gully, trench that's running down through there, right? That little gap that we ran it through, we want it to stay there. We don't want to put something in there and wedge it up to have it coming bulging up out of there, right? So when I first started trying to do this, what I was doing was I was going down through the bracelet on this side. See how? Here, we turn it this way. The top where I started weaving. I'm going to cross over, and I would go on this side of that piece of 95. I would go down all the way through the back side of the bracelet, and then I would run it back up and come out on this side of that piece of 95 so I could run it over here. And it was an added step. But I was like, man, it was kind of hard to get it to go through there. Down through it, and then you had to come back the other way. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And I started looking at this thing. Okay, you notice I turned the bracelet around. This is where I started weaving, going down this way. I'm going to turn it around. And if you look at it, if you come at this thing right here, and you kind of go barely, I've got that one pulled pretty tight. But if you do it just right, it pops under that bracelet. And don't wedge it, don't bend this thing, this piece, don't bend it back too much. Just barely get it through there. And it's actually, like I said before, we're working with 3 dimensions, so you always have to be mindful of that. If you look at it from this, I know you can't see that very well, but where that lacing needle, stitching needle is going through, it's actually sitting lower than this piece of 550 right here. Lower toward the table, lower. You can't see it. I mean, I can see it from right here, but it's hard for that camera to see what I'm talking about. But if you're real careful with it, you can just slide that thing through there, And it doesn't cause, see how it bulges up a little bit, but not much. If you do it just right, you can get it through there without pulling that piece up out of place very much. Right? Be very careful when you do it. If you get it at right at just the right angle, it'll go up under there. And then when you get it on there like that, just give it a little snug, and that's it. Now we're going to turn it back around the way it would look. See? And it hasn't pulled it up out of place a whole lot. So be mindful of that. And now we're going to just run across, and we're going to do it again from this side. Come at it. You see how in between this piece here and this piece here, there's a little bit of that gap right there. If you can get it right up under that little, in that gap, you can get it up under there. And you can push it through. And it's not pulling that piece of 95 up out of there. And I did it in the wrong one. I should have did it here, but I did it here. I do that. I do that often when I'm making YouTube videos, because I'm trying to let the camera see it, and I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. We're gonna get this back out of here. Give me a second. Okay, now we're gonna do it again on the one we're supposed to. Right here. If you look, there's a little bit of a gap right there. If you just get it down in that gap, you can run it up under there without distorting that piece of 95 or 275 or whatever it is you have. Now I know if you're using it, like I said, I haven't done it with 550 yet, so you may not be able to do it with that. See? Kind of hold it down and just give it a little tug. And here we go. We got us a zig. Now we have us a zag. Now we're going to do another zig and another zag. We're just going to work our way down, and that's all there is. That's all it is. If you just get it right there in that little groove, you can get it right up under there without distorting it out of place too much. Mindful of that twist. Hold it down and just give it a little tug. Now when you pull on this, you don't want to pull this so tight that it causes that piece of 95 to move over. You still want that piece of 95 to be straight. So, be mindful of it. Look at it. Look at it down that angle. Does that make sense? That's all there is to this. This is a pretty easy stitch, but you got to have those pieces of 95 in place in order to do this. Right there. I had it going up here. We want it down here. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to just kind of bend it a little bit. Get it right there. Get it right up under there. That's it. Now this is a pretty quick stitch. You can do this one pretty fast. Press it back down flat and just kind of give it a little tug. We'll do it again from this side. And that's it. That's all that is. Do it again. Pop it down in there. Run it up under there. Make sure you don't snag the bottom of that piece of 550 with your fin. Because when I was doing this for the first time the other day, I realized, oh yeah, that's a potential. You're gonna snag the bottom of that. Okay, down here, twist it to get that twist here to get the twist out over here. When it gets there, just kind of press it down. Now we see how it's starting to take shape. But that's it. That's all there is to this one. This stitch is not hard. You just got to be careful when you go up under there. Try to get the twist out. And then come back and do it again. Pop it down in that little groove. Get it up under there. Once you get it under there, that's it. Do it again from this side. You see that? That's all there is to it. Just taking shape. I pulled that one a little too tight. It's kind of tweaked it out of place. But that's it. That's all there is to that one. And that thing, it looks good. Like I've had a couple of people say, you know, that stitching really brings out, it gives definition. I've seen that word used twice. They said it gives definition to this bracelet. It does. It does. Like I've said, I've seen people do stitching, and the stitching looks good. They've done a great job, but the stitching pattern does not follow the grain of the weave. It's just, you know, it's kind of, well, I personally think it looks better when the stitching follows the grain of the weave somehow. And in this case, it gives it definition, or it accentuates the nature of the weave itself. Because like I said, look at it that way. And it's just a bracelet, no big deal. But when you put that stitching on there, it makes your eye notice the actual weave of the bracelet. It highlights the weave of the bracelet, if that makes any sense. But with all that, I'm going to wave this one out to the end. Once I get down here to the end, I'll come back one last time, and we'll finish it off, and we'll put it on the sizing manual, the trial by fire, as I call it. I normally, if I'm making one of these for myself, I'll do it right here on my wrist, but this is for being sized for a customer, and we'll put it on my sizing manual, and we're going to hope it fits. I'm going to hope I sized it right? But with that, stick around. I'll be back in a second, folks. Okay, folks, I'm back. I've got this one weaved out. Look at that one. That looks good. Looks good, good, good. All I got to do is this one last little wrap. And what we're going to do is we're going to do just like before. We're going to come over and we're going to go up under that piece of 95, and we're just going to go across and down through the bracelet, and then back weave it into there. When I get there, I got a tip. Okay. Do this last one. Let me bring my light over here so I can see. Maybe you can see. Let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, last one. So tight down here, it's not wanting to go through very well. So I'm gonna get it through there. Just give me a second. Like I've said previously a few times, the top and the bottoms are usually pretty tight, especially when you have all these cords going through the back. And let me get it through here. And I got something I want to. Why are we having issues? There we go. Yeah, there we go. Work through, get the twist out. Bam, and that's the last one. Now we're just going to run it through right here to the back side of the bracelet. It should go right through there. At least I say that. Yep, right through. Okay, now this is the tip I was going to say. Two tips, I guess. Let's get it up. Now you can see where I've come out. Here, let me get the light up here so you can see. See, everything else ran underneath this one and this cord, right? But this one's coming out between them. So we're just going to run up under that one, right? How long did I say I cut this piece? 5 feet, right? Let's get it in there. Let's cut it. Burn that in. Burn that, even though we're about to cut it off and it's going to go in the trash, we're still going to burn it. Okay, I cut 5 feet. There's 2 feet. Right at 3 feet. So, that piece of cord that we just stitched that zigzag with, 3 feet. That's what I'm going to go with, 3 feet. That'll be enough, depending on the size of the bracelet. You should have enough, even if you make a bracelet bigger. So, let me write that down on my card. I've been writing some of this stuff. Center stitch, 3 feet. Okay. The wrapping stitch, what did I say? I cut 7 feet and we could have used I'm gonna write down 6. That's what I'm gonna say, just so I know we have enough. Actually, let me do that again. Let me sure I said 5. Yeah, let's change this center stitch, which was what we just did. I'm gonna change it to 4. That way, I know it's long enough. Like I say, I would rather have a big old piece of scrap to go in my bucket than to not be able to finish. That's just me. I know some people are very frugal with their cord. It doesn't cost that much. It really doesn't. And you get 100 feet for right at $10. Now, granted, there's shipping and things like that, but basically you're paying 10 cents a foot, so, you know, I know it can add up. It does add up, and I know some people are on a budget, and I'm on a budget and all that too, but I would rather be able to finish a product that I can sell than to waste the time it took me to sit here and make this and then go, and then have to redo it. Makes sense. Get my fit off. Oh, that was on there pretty tight. Put it in the holder. Take this piece. Now, this happens to me. I'll say this. This happens to me quite often. That's where I had the fit attached because I kept manhandling it back and forth and pushing it. It gets that little fray on there. It happens. Well, what I'll do, obviously, I'll cut that off. Throw that little throw that piece in the trash. Which is way behind me. That shouldn't be. Now this is going to go in a special scrap for microcord. I got a couple scrap buckets right here at my desk. I've got a little container for microcord. I've got one container for solid colors, not black, and one container for multicolored cords. And I have a completely separate one for black because I use a lot of black, so I have a lot of scrap on black. Right. And when those get filled up, I'll go through them, and the ones that are long enough to actually save, I'll save, and some I'll end up throwing away. But that's just me. Okay. Well, I guess I never did do that one. Let's burn that one real quick. Okay. Now, here's the tip. Here's the two tips, I should say. Let me get this out of the way. I'm going to say this. For anybody who saw the pictures where I posted this on social media, okay? Well, see, if I explained this to my wife last night. I had her look at it, and she doesn't know how to do paracord, but she hears me talk about it. She's watched me do this, and she knows in theory. She knows the theoretical principles of doing this, but she can't actually. I will say she can't. She never has actually come out here and done it, right? But when I took a picture of this, the picture of it at this angle, it looked misshapen, kind of back here on this back edge in the front of it. You see how it gets, it's kind of wide, and then as it gets to the buckle, it gets narrow. A little bit. It's not real noticeable, but it is. But when I took that picture, I noticed it. I noticed it a lot. She kind of said something to me, and I told her, I said, I'll tell you. First off, when you make one of these bracelets, especially something that's got a multiple core strands, in this case we're using a 6-strand core, you got all these core strands, they're all kind of bunched together up here at the top. So a lot of times what happens is the first couple of weaves, repetitions, they don't look right, they don't sit right. Why? Because all them core strands, everything's all bunched together real tight. Hence, when I was talking about stitching, everything's tight up here and down here. It's because the core strands are bunched together and you got all these cords right there. Okay? And it causes the bracelet itself to be narrow at the top. But as you come down and those core strands, they start to flatten themselves out and the weave starts to take shape, better shape. It looks more like what it's supposed to in the meat of the bracelet. Right? And then when you get down to the end, it gets narrow again. I don't know if you guys can see this on the camera. I can see it from where I'm at. But it comes down, it's not really straight right now either. But it's a little narrow, and it gets a little fatter right here, and then it gets narrow again. Okay? That's natural. That's going to happen because of so many core strands. But, and here's the other part, but, when you have all these strands like this, and you back weave them into the bracelet, what happens is it causes this bulge on the back side, and it tightens it up on the side, so it gets even narrower than it would normally be, because you've got all this back here. And that's the downside to putting all the cords, the way I do it, all the cords in the same spot to anchor them all. If you spread that out, you don't get so much of that narrowing. Does that make sense? You put them all together, it causes it to be real tight and everything get narrow. Now, I don't notice it so much on this one as I do on this one. But just be aware of that, right? It's nowhere near as noticeable on this one. But then again, I didn't pull this one as tight as I normally would. This one, I pulled it pretty tight. But I didn't pull this one as tight. Okay, now, with all that said, here's another thing. I know, we know the size of bracelet, we take into consideration how thick it is, right? And there's formulas, pi and radius and diameter and all that kind of stuff, right? And I use them on occasion. Most of the time, I just make the thing, eyeball it, guess, write down my measurements, make it. When I get done, if it's too big or too small, I adjust my measurement, right? But on a bracelet like this, especially for me, when I have all these cords come to one point and I back weave them all in the same point, what tends to happen, what can potentially happen, is it causes a bulge right there, right? So right there at the end of the bracelet, it's thicker than it is in the meat of the bracelet. And that can cause the sizing to be a little bit different. Not to mention the fact that this one I've used 95. Doesn't have much of an effect. This one's got 275, a little bit in the sizing. But I made one of these, like I said, and instead of running this piece that runs up all the way through, up under there, that 95, in this case it's 275, on that one where I put 550 and 95, yes, it affected the sizing of the bracelet. It caused it to be thicker. Therefore, I had to size it up just a little bit. And then, because instead of having only two pieces of 95 coming through from those stitch that runs all the way down, it was 2 pieces of 95 and 2 pieces of 550, along with everything else. So this was a big old huge bump right there, right? So when I go to cut and burn these, I try to separate them out a little bit so it's not such a big, thick bump, right? Because that will affect the sizing. Just that one little bump right there. And you'll go, oh, you'll size your bracelet, and you go to put it on, and it doesn't do right. I made my wife one, and she said something to me one day when she put it on. She said, why is there a bump? What is that? And I had to explain to her, that's the way this is put together. There's so many cords in there, and they're all coming to that one spot in the end. It causes that little bump. I said, is it scratching your arm? Because, you know, you do melt it and turns to a piece of hardwood. She said, no. She said, it's just, I'm like, that's just the way these things are. I said, so, you know, just when you make these, be mindful of that. But I'll try to flatten those out a little bit. See, it's not that big of a deal up here. You got 2 pieces of 95 and 2 pieces of microcord. That's almost negligible. But down here, when you have a lot of it to come together, it can affect the size of the bracelet. Makes sense? So there's your tips. When you get down to the end of the bracelet, you might want, if you know you've got a bunch of cords that you're going to have to back weave, don't pull the bottom of it as tight as you normally would. That way, when you do back weave it, it doesn't make the bracelet get abnormally narrow. Narrower than it's going to be already because, you know, it is a 6-strand cord. Does that make sense? But on this one, it's not that noticeable, but I notice it. It gets really narrow right there. And it's because all those cords go through right there. And there's only so much material there. It can either be real thin and wide, or it's going to be narrow and thick. Does that make sense? So, if you take that into consideration when you're weaving and don't weave the last couple of repetitions as tight, that gives you a little room to work with. And it'll keep your bracelet from getting narrow when you back weave everything into it. Makes sense? And just because you got all them in there, you got to take into consideration for the sizing purposes. Makes sense? Okay, now with all that said, there's your tips and tricks. Now let's cut and burn this, try by fire on the sizing manual, and we'll be done. And we'll have this a stitched, modified, inverted Zawbar. And I don't even know what kind of stitch pattern this is. Like I said, that's stuff I come up with. Okay, cut and burn. Get your smoothing tool, whatever it is, at the ready. So you're not fumbling for it, or you got melted plastic getting hard on you. And I always try to take these things and angle them. So when I cut them, They're not flat against the bracelet because we want to burn these and not the bracelet. All that's going in the trash. Let's slide the trash can up here to me. Okay, now I'm going to do this so I can see this. Hopefully I can do this without getting the bracelet. What I'm doing is I'm melting, trying to get all those cords, the tips of all those cords to melt, so that they all that melted plastic melds together into one lump. That way, all those cords are individual, but right there where they're all melted together in this one hard lump. And that one hard lump is not going to come back out of there. If it's just one piece that you've kind of flattened out, mushroomed out, potential over time, wear and tear, it can come out. But when they're all together like that, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Down here, it's the same way. That's why I do it that way. That's the reason I do it that way. It's got its pros and its cons, but I find it to be better. The bracelet itself lasts longer. I've had some bracelets that I made back before I did it that way, and I got some that I've bought from Amazon and people or whatever when I first started off to see as a visual aid, and they didn't do like that. And I noticed over time, even though that one piece of cord was mushroomed and flattened out, it did have its tendency over time, wear and tear, to try to work itself back out, and the thing starts coming loose. And I'm like, no, I don't want mine to last. I want them to last. Get them all up there. If you need to, leave you a little bit there. That way there's something for you to burn as opposed to getting so close to the bracelet. Okay, now in this, we're going to do this the same way. Oof, I can smell that polyester. When you do it, make sure you don't have any little hard run your finger across it. Make sure it's smoothed out. Make sure you don't have little teats, burrs, hard spots. Because, you know, typically the buckle sits over back here on the back side of your wrist, and that's a very sensitive part. And if you got a hard little burr of plastic sticking out there, it's going to be uncomfortable for the person who's wearing it. So you don't want that. But there we go. A stitched, modified, inverted Zawbar. Stealth olive and moss green stitching. Looks pretty daggone good if you ask me. Okay, now, like I said, trial by fire. We're going to back out. Let's not back out too far. Get everything back in its place. Get that out of the way. Okay, our sizing manual. 7 3/4 inch. Go ahead and bend it a little bit. Get it shaped. Got it on there. The 8-inch mark is right there. So you can see. 7 3/4 inch. Looks like a fit to me. But there you go. That's how I make a stitched, modified Zawbar. And I may do some other videos on different stitch patterns on this thing. But like I say, I'll show these again. I'll show some of these again. You can see them. There's so many possibilities on how to do this thing. You know, you can do it in the one color bracelet and the one color in the stitch. You can alternate. There's 3 elements of stitching there. And you can do them in 3 different colors. Actually, there's 4 elements, but if you count the 2 pieces running lengthwise, there's 2 separate elements. You see what I'm saying? So, whatever. So, you can do it the solid color bracelet and solid stitching. You can do it like this one, where you have like the bracelet 2 colors and then the 2 pieces running down there as an accent. You can see them. So, you can see without all that stitching, you can see those 2 pieces of orange. But over here on this, they just kind of get lost. But they're needed to do that zigzag pattern. Make sense? Well, like this one right here, it's 2 color bracelet, but I put the accent on the tiny wraparounds as opposed to this one where the accent goes all the way across. See the difference? And I only did 1 set of stitches. I didn't do the zigzag because I wanted you to be able to see that orange. But this one has so many different options of how you can do it. And that's one of the reasons I love this bracelet. But there we go. I appreciate you watching. Give us a like. Give us a share and a subscribe or whatever. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. But with that, I'll end this like I end all my videos. Keep it neat. Keep it clean. And keep it tight. Happy weaving, folks.